Right. Hello. All right. Hello, all the fellow hats out there, all you hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters, and in particular, you anglers and people interested in angling. So, Jim Kirkrudo here with Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation, talking about some cool new research specifically toward increasing volunteers for fishing programs. We all know how fun it is to see the excitement on somebody's face when they're reeling in their first fish, and we want more of that. We want more people to get outside, and we want more current anglers to help with that. So we did a large multi-state conservation grant project to learn all about that, and we've got some great findings that Patrick is going to tell you about.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. First, to introduce myself, I'm Patrick Hogan. I'm the president of Southwick Associates. We do economic research and market research, conservation-related research for the hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation-related industries. As Jim mentioned, the focus of this project is to support a robust network of volunteers who dedicate their time and energy to supporting state R3 efforts by educating and enhancing the skills of those who are interested in learning to fish or learning more about fishing. So, Jim, as you mentioned, this project was funded by a multi-state conservation grant administered through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Office of Conservation Investment, jointly administered by the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. The specific research questions that we wanted to break down this bigger question of like how do we support this framework, the specific research questions that we wanted to tackle with this is, why do volunteers spend their time and energy volunteering? We know that there are an infinite number of other activities that they could be engaging in. They could be engaging in no activities at all. They could be hanging out on their couch at home. What makes them choose volunteering as a way to spend their weekend or their afternoon? Better understanding their motivations is going to help us appeal to others. Once we know why folks do it, we want to get more people in the door to volunteer. We need to know how to reach them. So, research question number 2, how do volunteers become aware of the opportunity to volunteer in the first place? Understanding their journey from this state of unawareness to engaged with the states will assist in replicating that. And lastly, how can we put all of this information together to outfit states with the information necessary to find more volunteers? Another sub-priority that's not listed here includes, what can we do to better support the population of current volunteers? What pain points can we address to make sure that we're retaining our volunteers and we're not bringing new volunteers into a system that needs a few pain points addressed? So how did we do this? Southwick Associates, in partnership with DJ Case and Associates, handled 2 general parts of this methodology. We had focus groups conducted by DJ Case and Associates, 2 different focus groups, half of them, or 2 sets of 2 focus groups, pardon me. One set focused on current volunteers who are active in their state agencies, spending time teaching people how to fish or maybe enhancing skills related to fishing. And then Southwick Associates conducted the quantitative survey of potential volunteers, informed by the findings through the focus groups. A quick overview of what we uncovered in the research. And I should mention, before I go too much further, we'll talk about a lot here. There's a lot more in the report. We're going to plug the report at the end. But if I'm going through this and it feels like I'm trying to cover a lot of ground in a little bit of time, just know that there's significantly more detail in the full report. Trying to think through what motivates those volunteers to spend their time and their energy and their resources supporting state R3 and fishing specific efforts. They want to have a positive impact on their community. They see introducing people to fishing as a way to care for the environment and really put conservation into practice. And they want to do their part to have a positive impact on fishing participation overall. They want to support that next generation of anglers coming in and having fun, but also continuing to support the conservation model that we've supported for many generations, and sort of backfill their position in the community with a cohort of folks who's just as excited about fishing as they were. Now, as is the case with any sort of volunteer engagement, any employment, any long-term relationship, there's always frustrations. We found a few frustrations in these volunteer engagements. Current volunteers find a lot of friction in the administrative side. Of course, there's lots of work that needs to be done to make sure that we're bringing in the right people into these programs, but we're meeting them right at the outset with applications and onboarding processes that are lengthy and can really end up turning this like fun, fulfilling activity into a bit of a chore, and that sort of zaps the fun out of this. It zaps some of the energy out of it. Separate barrier is this sense of confidence that some potential volunteers or some, pardon me, existing volunteers can feel like they're not really in a position to impart their wisdom on new participants, and that can be a hindrance. They need more in the way of preparation materials so that they can feel confident that they're passing along the right information. And lastly, time demands can be a lot to overcome. Spending 1 or 2 days here and there is fine if that's all it is, but a lot of current volunteers have found that if an engagement was initially sold as 1 or 2 days a month, a lot of times it ends up slipping into more and more time, and that sense of blowing past established boundaries can be a source of frustration. So really clarifying the amount of time that is to be spent in these volunteer engagements is critical. So real quick, I'm going to bring us back up out of the negative sort of barriers. We're going to talk about opportunities to refine some of this. There's lots of opportunities to make sure that we're meeting the volunteers' energy and enthusiasm with the relationship infrastructure that's going to keep them engaged as volunteers, keep them continuing their support of our programming, and create this excited network that folks are looking forward to joining, right? I'm sure we've all been in a situation where we've gotten to a workplace and you see that everyone loves it here. We're way more likely to say that if you get to a workplace and everyone's kind of bummed out that all of these barriers are being faced. So communication really is key here. Being really clear with where one's role starts and ends, what a volunteer is responsible for, what their expectations are, what success looks like. Any of us who've been in management positions know that this is really critical in order for us to have that individual contributor be successful. We've got to help them figure out what that role really looks like. And the same goes for our volunteers here. Being clear with what it is they are to do and just what direction they're supposed to work in really helps the volunteers feel like they're making a difference and feel like they're achieving the success. And that fulfilling feeling keeps them engaged. The last big opportunity is supporting them with material. So we've talked about the sense of fulfillment, but when it comes down to it, a lot of these volunteer activities take gear. Like there's rods and reels and tackle and bait, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. As is the case with the broader communication sense, just being really clear with where the state is able to help out a volunteer and maybe where they're not, where that volunteer needs to source their own materials. That established boundary helps those volunteers feel like their time and their energy, and in some cases their money, is being valued, as all of these inputs are required to have a successful volunteer program. Defining where support exists and where support might not exist is really critical. In every case, what we want to do is reduce the ambiguity, because ambiguity is the enemy of a long-term relationship like this. So digging in to learn more about how volunteers came to their post, we found that the majority of current volunteers learned about the opportunity from someone in their life who was already a volunteer, just sort of extending this network of volunteers. Really, what that looks like is that they learned about these opportunities from friends or family members. This graph shows volunteer entry point by age. let me get my laser pointer here. Volunteer entry point by age. So if I learned about it through a current volunteer and I am 70 years old, then I'm in this yellow. 45 to 64, I'm in this green. So there wasn't enough room on here for a graph title, but those current volunteers, for the most part, learned about it from their friends and family members, and that typically has looked like a spouse or a parent or a close friend who worked at the agency, and they're already super familiar with these opportunities. Or also, what we found more than we expected was that many volunteers are former agency folks themselves. They just retired out of that state agency, stepped into a new role under that agency umbrella, and are now volunteering. And while that's great, we have a great sense of confidence in that individual's ability to carry out the goals of the agency. What it doesn't offer us is the ability to easily replicate that model so that we can bring new volunteers in. So as such, there's very few current volunteers that learned about these opportunities through an agency's active recruitment tools like social media posts or information on the website. They just learned about it word of mouth from their friends, or they might feel like they've always known about it. Said differently, current volunteers are not engaging with an agency's recruitment efforts. They're just already in the agency sphere. And that's critical to acknowledge because those who want to volunteer but haven't yet done so are largely not connected to the agency in that manner, and therefore they're not aware of the opportunities. There's a lot of awareness work that we need to address here. So something about our recruitment methods needs to fundamentally change if we want to see any change in recruitment efforts. So thinking now about potential volunteers, that was current volunteers, now potential volunteers, they're way more likely to use social media. They're more likely to seek information online instead of just asking their close friend at the agency or their significant other. This graph shows the most effective ways that states can promote volunteer opportunities to potential volunteers. The top methods of communication include detailed information on the agency website, emails from the agency, and social media posts about volunteer opportunities. So abstracting away from that graph for a second, current volunteers are older, they're not big social media users, and as we know, they have an established relationship with the agency, and that all sort of winds its way towards really individual communication styles. Jim, if you wanted something from me, you would send me an email. You wouldn't create a social media post to ask me to do a thing, as Patrick, right? Because we have this established relationship. Potential volunteers are younger. They are social media users. They are internet users. And therefore, they are fine with mass communications because they see the agency as an institution, not as the clubhouse where all of their friends are already gathered. Recognizing sort of the different communication styles that each of these require is critical because we can't replicate what got us to this point. We need to enact a change so that we can get that next cohort. And while there are some differences between these two groups, the current volunteers and the potential volunteers, there are common threads between the two. They both want to volunteer because they want to support the next generation of participants and they want to give back to the community. Those themes are common across both of these groups. So at the core of it is the same motivation. It's just different levers that we got to pull in order to get those folks there. So with all of that information, we created some pilot campaigns in order to test our ability to put that information into practice and get more interested parties into this funnel, ultimately creating a greater pool of volunteers to support our angling archery efforts. We used paid and organic social media and emails in a few states, Iowa, Connecticut, and Colorado. We're going to flash through a couple of ads, but first, the theme that we kept coming back to earlier was information, clarity of objectives, clarity of roles. And so we created landing pages, which all of the social media ads would be directed to. And on those pages, we established out front, here's exactly what this commitment looks like, clearly defining where the boundaries are, where the role starts and stops. time commitment, all of the things that we talked about earlier, bringing that clarity to the forefront so that we don't lose anybody along the way. Once we've got folks into this funnel past this page, the rest of the administrative burden has been lessened because we've already sort of committed to our parts in this role, either as the agency or as the volunteer. What we want to do is we want to keep it simple, and we want to make sure we don't surprise anyone. I'm sure we've all been in volunteer engagements where someone said it was going to be 1 weekend a month, and then it turns into way, way more. And that's not a rewarding feeling that's going to keep us coming back for more. So in focus groups, we saw that community-themed messages were stronger, and this proved to be true in Connecticut's pilot program. Oh, got some animation there. Sorry. So the sense of turning it over to the next generation, sort of this like, now it's your turn, that message still generated engagement. The sense of community really outperformed by about 4 times the amount of total engagement. In Colorado, what we found is the next generation messages were stronger than community for hunting and fishing. I should also mention we did similar work on the hunting side with another NGO, International Hunter Education Association USA. So there's a little bit of crossover in here. Community messages performed below the industry average a little bit. What we found in Colorado was this like passing it on is what stuck a little bit better. And then we ran 9 ads in Iowa as well. These were the top for the fishing category. This again, now it's your turn. We're passing it along. We're passing the baton to that next generation, and this appealing to the sense of like putting conservation into practice and taking care of the environment. We can't care for that which we're not aware of, and so bringing folks into the natural world through fishing helps us support, the health of the fisheries and continued participation that depends on it. So this all leads us to a handful of recommendations for the states. That's the wrong direction. There we go. Again, clear expectations, as is the case with any relationship. Everyone just wants to know what's expected of them, where one's role begins and ends. All of this helps the volunteers feel like their time and their energy is valued, and that's what it comes down to. There are some opportunities to support volunteers with hats or merch or thank you challenge coins, whatever it may be. And while that can definitely add to the sense of fulfillment that one gets from these volunteer efforts, it can't replace the sense of appreciation for one's time and energy that comes about through clear communication and like the solid foundation of that relationship. Using messages that mix some of these themes and respond better to the state's unique setting. There's lots more detail in the full report about just what messages work best in what situation, but being nimble enough to respond to what that audience needs is really key. There's no one size fits all solution here. Using mixed media approach. So again, no one size fits all. We can't just stick with emails and say, okay, we've got our outreach, but organic social media and paid social media are really critical, and everything in balance too. And lastly, doing what we can to reduce the onboarding, the burden of the administrative tasks related to gathering information and onboarding. It is critical so that we're starting the relationship on a good foot, right? What we don't want to do is create this huge time cost at the front end that sort of sets us off with diminished energy and enthusiasm for the volunteer effort. And for the final recommendation, Jim, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, for doing all that. I'm excited, about what we learned here. This is something that we did, for the states and the fishing industry, we know that there's a lot of opportunities out there to get on bodies of water that are underutilized, but there's not the staff to maybe try to get those get newcomers out there. So that's where the volunteers come and play. And the good news is there's not only a ton of people that want to get started fishing, but there's a ton of current anglers that definitely would volunteer their time for that. As Patrick said, follow the steps here. Don't tell them what it isn't. Tell them what it is. We're going to need you for this amount of time, this spot. Um, and it's really cool that it can be tailored to anywhere in your state. Let's say you've got some nice hard water that's being underutilized and you want to get more people out there ice fishing. You can tailor the messages, to ice fishing, fly fishing, surf fishing, get somebody on a boat, whether motorized or kayak fishing opportunities. Certainly you don't want to send everybody to one lake, right? All these newcomers go here on this day, right? That's going to be a bad experience for everybody. So you want to make sure you tailor your messages to where you want more people out on the water in your states. And another this opportunity here, kind of as a bonus, don't forget, your current customers are great to ask, but if you have partners in your state, whether it's a retailer that sells fishing equipment or um, a manufacturer or a business, um, ask them to promote the opportunity to, hey, we need some more, some volunteers to get out on the water. So Outdoor Stewards is a nonprofit, focus on fishing as well, and we put out a couple ads that got some good metrics as well. So the more eyeballs you have, the more that you ask people to volunteer, the more volunteers you're going to get. And I hate to oversimplify it because I know you guys have a complicated, a lot of work on your plates and very complicated, not only managing land, fish, and wildlife conservation. Now you got to manage hunters, like trappers, and shooters. So Patrick, myself, and Phil Sang are here for you. If you have any questions, we'd love to walk you through this. I believe our contact info is right here. Phil Sang at DJ Case, Patrick over at Southwick, and me at Outdoor Stewards. And, Patrick and I could talk for 2 hours, but nobody wants to hear that. So if you want more information, give us a call. And also go to outdoorstewards.org under our resources and research page. You'll find a full report and more information on getting people out there and enjoying it. So, all right. Well, thank you for your time and keep doing the good work you're doing. Perfect.
Yeah. Now, oh, there's stop recording.